We'd like to call upon Member of Knesset Arieh Eldad, our friend. He is that first address to every problem in the field, everywhere, in the Rime, in Shdema. Thank you, Arieh. Welcome all. Thanks for the invitation. Administrative notice before I forget. Be attentive again for calls for Migron. We might need you there tonight, tomorrow, Saturday night, Sunday. Just again, I'm just bringing to your attention, please be ready, please be prepared. If this public will be there, we might be able to spare ourselves scenes as we saw in Amona. And I think, whoever takes a decision to destroy the houses in Migron will probably miss Migron, will miss Amona. And so after this administrative notification, 2 comments to Tzipi, and then I'll set forth. First of all, those who really want to see the Arabs running away, he mustn't take them to national service, let him mobilize them to the army. And a second comment, in that same cynical spirit, but it's not cynical because I think that is maybe the real dispute that I have with Tzipi in every place, in the Knesset especially. I don't know what is going to happen first. First, will the Likud adopt the plan of Member of Knesset Kotobeli, or will the Likud create a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria? That is my main concern. Again, I don't think you should be applauding. This is a real concern of mine, and it's common to both of us. I don't think any one of us can guess. I am much more pessimistic. That is true. That is why I said I cannot be there. As far as those public claims, those political international claims, the legal claims, there is a vacuum that has been created. There is a trial going on, as with one side present. The Arabs say, above every podium, yes, our Palestinian, they say, we demand self-determination, we demand a state, we demand the end of occupation. And there is no response from the state of Israel to these claims. We left the international arena to one prosecutor. I do not recall when an Israeli leader came up and said, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, belongs to the Jewish people alone. I do not recall. He didn't say that it belongs. He talked about the historical right. He talked about the fact that we were born here, and this is where we created our culture. He had a great lecture, yes. But he didn't say, he said, right, we are not occupied, but he just wanted to rectify what Ariel Sharon did. But he didn't say the very simple thing that you said. We demand sovereignty over the state of Israel. Vis-a-vis the Arab sovereignty, we must demand Israeli sovereignty. That is the beginning of anything. Again, this is not even, I'm not talking about a plan, I'm not even talking about demography, I'm not even talking about imposing the law. We demand, vis-a-vis the international community, we want it to be written in every international forum, Israel demands sovereignty over this territory. There's no such demand right now. And when there is that vacuum, vacuums are always filled. And this vacuum will be filled with the Arab demand. And they will use terminology that the international community likes to hear, like self-determination and definition, end of occupation. And from us, that definition of occupation, I mean, we heard that from our own Prime Minister. And even those who try to be neutral, so to speak, they too said some sort of an area that is in a military status, so to speak, a disputed area. I mean, again, the base people said this is an area that is disputed. They did not simply say this is ours. Yes, they demanded, surely we know that, but they didn't really say that. That is how we lost the campuses, that is how we lost the international arena, and it is not irreversible, but this is the first step that is needed in every political plan, whatever it may be. And if I had to give claims to those who wish to divide the land, I would say to them to open up every negotiation with that statement that it is ours. Because if it is not ours, what are you giving? If it is not ours, what are you dividing? The Arabs say, and justly so, you're not giving us anything, it is ours. You can't even claim that it is yours. There were speeches, and Sipi mentioned that lovely speech by Netanyahu in the Congress. Yes, there were mentions of history. They talk about the affiliation, about the deep connection, about the destruction of the Jewish nation. But these things, you know, the same people say these things, also the people who are on the other side. They say the same thing, and with all the pain, and despite Bethlehem, and despite Hebron, and despite Eli, and despite Shiloh, for peace we are able to give these all away. So those historical mentionings, unfortunately, have just become a laundry of words. They don't bind anybody, they don't obligate anything. And the second thing that is required in order to fill up that vacuum, besides that demand, that very basic demand, is plan. Unfortunately, there is only one serious political plan on the international arena. Nobody talks there's esteemed forums about any political plan besides the division. And since the division of the land is suggested by people from both sides, both from the right and the left, from Netanyahu through Lieberman and their predecessors, yes, dividing up the land is acceptable to them. And let me just open up a parenthesis and say, Nadia mentioned the Shtula, the advocacy for Eretz Israel, and I and Zev Elkin head this advocacy. If you see the objectives of the advocacy, it is not written preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state, for the very simple reason that not all partners in that Shtula, in that advocacy, agree to this. People keep telling me that, you know, we can't, you know, make all people from Israel say that, because they have already said that they agree to have a Palestinian state. And Netanyahu has said, and that is why we have a problem to have some sort of, you know, we can't go to a lower common denominator. We keep doing that, and it is an important parliamentary tool. Surely, although that very simple statement that we object to the establishment of a Palestinian state is already doesn't belong to that central, to the streamlined, or to the national right-wing sector, and of course it does not belong to the left. The only political plan that was talked of until it died and perished, a natural death, was Begin's autonomy. Begin brought it up in order to remove himself from the trap of Sadat about Sinai. Sadat insisted that there would also be room for a solution for the Palestinian problem, and Begin, by trying to overcome this, he had that autonomy plan. It wasn't quite a plan, but even that did not have any statement saying that there will be an imposition of full Israeli law over Judea and Samaria, and for those Arabs in that state there would be an autonomy. So autonomy was mentioned without the other side of the coin. Of course, that plan was put aside, and Sadat objected to it for certain reasons. Of course, Sadat wasn't quite interested in the Palestinians. He wanted to close matters, and he was closer to with Sinai, and so the plan didn't move forward. But that plan gave legitimization to all those who dealt later on from the left side with that recognition of the Palestinian entity, recognizing their rights. Again, if they're allowed an autonomy, they have rights. So again, we're talking about quantity and not quality again. So the difference between autonomy and what the left thinks is about quantity, not about quality. Of course, we cannot talk about Palestinians and autonomy because they don't want autonomy. So we have to talk to them about other things because that's what they want. And then in that vacuum of demands and a vacuum of political or alternative political plans, there is only one plan, and that is the division of the land. The plan for dividing the land, surely we don't have to explain to you why it is a catastrophe, why it keeps failing. I would just like to maybe tell you, equip you with some tools for the struggles and conflicts you'll have with people. Because when somebody comes to a doctor and tells him that he has a sore throat and a temperature, the doctor will examine him and give him penicillin. If it does not work after a week, he will re-examine the patient and he will think maybe the antibiotics that he gave the patient, or maybe that bacteria in the throat is not sensitive to that antibiotics, and he will give him a different antibiotics. If he comes back 3 weeks later and tells him that things have gotten worse and he can hardly walk now, maybe there will be a doctor who will prescribe another antibiotics, a third antibiotics, but the reasonable doctor is supposed to put an end to that process and might say, maybe my diagnosis was wrong. So this division of the land is based on a wrong perception, on a misconception, as if we are talking about a conflict over territory. If the conflict is only territorial, then the medication would be division of the land. But if the conflict is not a territorial one, then we can keep prescribing penicillin as much as we want. Again and again and again, we try to divide the land from 1922. And every time it ends with war, with bloodshed, with pogroms, with intifada and riots, and we keep prescribing that same medicine. Einstein once defined madness, and he said madness is doing the same activity time and time again, and to expect the result to be different the next time, but the result is not going to be different. That is why the division of the land is concerned. That is one of 4 theoretical solutions with different variants. The second option is, and Sippy mentioned this, is again having the current situation prevail. Remember, from all the different difficult times that we've had, from international pressures and demography and other such things, again, having the situation prevail is maybe the least of our troubles. If somebody were to say to us that we can freeze the current situation, maybe it is an option that we might think of, that we might consider. But we are regressing. When we try to preserve the current situation, we're actually regressing. We are moving back because there are already dates that prophesize the end of the current situation. For example, that Arab threat to go in September to the United Nations. Maybe I'll mention that in a word later on.